Welcome back to my Let's Make a Game video series, and today's topic, game structure. Now, if you watched the last video, we talked about file structure, which you'll see right here in the corner, with these folders, which I go into more explanation in the first video. Now, with this video, we're going to talk about basic linear game story structure, and why we should do it, like create a base skeleton for our story. Now, in this particular case, I'm still following Yanfly's example. Next video, I'm going to be branching away from Yanfly. But I do like the idea behind what he said, and so I'm going to show you. So right here, my to-do list, like I mentioned before, is a folder. It's not an actual map. And we have a few maps here based on his structure. Now, first is the introduction, which in this case will be empty for now, and my reasoning for this is that introductions should happen after you have the meat of your story. You want to package your product after your product has, it's there, it's finished, it's ready for the packaging. How do you know how to introduce a story when you yourself haven't created the world or the story yet? And so the next few maps, which I've already gone ahead and created, they're going to be super simple. So we have a town, which doesn't really have anything because this is not the final product. This is just here to form a skeleton for the game. The story elements, as I mentioned in the previous video, are more like the pathways to a location or any real story elements that lead up to the point when you go to your dungeon instance. So in this case, it's just a path, nice and straight, nice and simple. The dungeon in this case, in most dungeons you have to find a key item to progress in the story or to progress in the dungeon itself, which is here shown by this circle or the spell circle here. And then we have the boss room. And in JRPG structure, that's essentially the story. You start in a town, or you go to this town, and some story happens and you have to go to the first dungeon, be it in a forest, be it in a temple, be it in a volcano, wherever you want it to be. That it follows that line, and then you fight your boss battle. Now, yes, some people might have like secondary events that happen in the story where you have other boss battles, but the main structure of the plot is town, story, dungeon, boss. And then it will repeat, so you go to the next town where more story happens, and the next dungeon happens, and the next boss is fought, and you progress that way. Now, yes, sometimes there will be story between boss and town. In some cases, it actually happens at the end of the boss fight. Like, okay, we've defeated this person, now we have to go back to this place, or we were heading to this location, so let's go there next. And the process would repeat. So just to show the basic skeleton that I have going here, I did leave these the final set of maps empty. So the reason the skeleton is here is you want to have a link between these areas. So like I'm doing right now, I'm linking town 3 to the end of the boss. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that there is only these maps. This is the structure your story will follow. We'll fill in more gaps as we create it, and this way, you don't have to stay too stuck. Like, where you have to go. Like in my case, I made each town a different biome, so you're going from just a temperate location to a really hot area, then to a really cold area. Does that make sense? Maybe not, but this is just for the skeleton purposes. So I'm going to go ahead and finish making these transfer events, which, if you've never made a transfer event or you're new to RPG Maker, first off, welcome to the community, and second off, you would just right click while under the events button up here with the little red symbol, and you would go to quick event when you right click, and then transfer. Retain just means that you'll be facing the direction you were in when you entered the transfer, and you will go to wherever you want to transfer to. In this case right here, to dungeon 3 is where I'm going. And then in dungeon 3 you have to do it again, it's not automatic, so that you can transfer from dungeon 3 back to story 3 in this case. and then you want to do it again. Now, for those of you that are more veterans in RPG Maker, I do apologize if this is going too slow for you, and we will be making a little bit more progress in future videos, but I just want to show you a nice basic structure to help in your game making progress. Okay, now this map isn't finished, it's the ending, but we'll get more onto that later. So right now we have transfer between every map, just like I did in the previous maps. Now in the dungeon, if you looked at dungeon 2 and 1, we have this circle here. So what we're going to do there, because it's our key item, you just right click and you create a new event. You would put your image on it, which in my case is going to be the circles. If I can find them, there they are. I'm going to use green this time because I used blue last time. We're going to create 2 pages. We're going to make it so that the other one only helps you move around after you've already stepped and activated this circle. Now, I have such a hard time finding these circles too, which is a bad choice on my part. But so what we want to do here in this nice simple thing is we want this to be under player touch, so whenever my character just walks over it, it'll activate. And in this case, I'll simply be activating a self switch, and then doing the same here. You do want to make sure that this is below characters, or else your character will not be able to pass by it. And this is just going to be whenever self switch is on, that happens. And because this is supposed to be a key item, it represents a key item, I am going to be using a switch here. In this case, key 3. I made a mistake earlier and did not include key 2, so I will be going back to fix that in a moment. Now, with that done, what this would be, if it was your boss room door, what you would want to happen is that it will not work unless, you know, that key was in your character's possession. In this case, that happens, so I'm just going to move this here. There's really no chance of me missing it, but, you know, for future use, when I come back to it and actually develop the world, it might be important. Now going back here, I do have to make sure that this is below characters because I did not do that beforehand. And right here, this is the wrong place to put it. So I want to include the switch being turned on in the first page, because if it waits till the second page, I'd have to walk back over the circle, and that kind of defeats the purpose of the way we set this up. And you would switch the key. If it was an item, you would be getting the key over and over until you have way too many copies in your inventory. So basic structure is done now. We go from one town to the story. So from town to story to dungeon to boss, town, story, dungeon, boss, down, story, dungeon, and you know, we want the boss to actually be here. So for those of you that already know, it's nice, simple. Just go ahead and choose your boss, put him in the image. I have this to action button where he just is going to turn off a self switch. We're not going to get into battles just yet, and then he would be dead because you fought him or whatever. And that's it. That's the basic structure. So, oh, one thing you do want to do if you're starting a new symbol is probably turn this off. Not to say that you can't use it later, but it does make playtesting faster when you don't have to sit through the splash screen. Sorry if that was a little loud, I do apologize, and yes, I am connected to Steam. Now if you look here, I've already made one mistake. I'm in the debug room. What you do want to actually have a transfer from your debug room to your first town or intro, which the intro is not set up, so right now we want the first town. I'm just going to move my starting position over here to symbolize the start of the story. And yet again, I'm sorry about that. So here, nice and simple, you would just walk, character would give you some story dialogue, you would move along, because like in most stories, there's always that one NPC you have to talk to get the idea of what's going on in that area. You move along through the town, story, and then here we are in the dungeon. We have our key items, so we can now move along. and we come up to our boss, which once we talk to him, he's dead. We move on to the next town, progress with our story, and again, you know, we would get our story information from that one NPC. And obviously, like I said before, this isn't how this is going to look at the end, but our basic structure is always nice. If you guys have any ideas for how you would like the actual game to go once we start with story, I am interested in hearing what you have to say. I would like to make a game that, you know, we can make together, and I'll release it to everybody once it's actually done, not this silly little linear bare bones structure. You can barely see that one in the color, but there you go. And our first hiccup. I, in all my wisdom, forgot something important, I am sure. Yes, so right here, I have it on action button. Had I pressed the button, I would have actually been able to transfer. But and I'm not going to make you sit through all of that again. You got the basic idea of how this works. But from here on out, now that we have these in the to-do list, I am going to go ahead and move Town 1 to work in progress, Story 1 to work in progress, Dungeon and Boss 1 to work in progress. So in the next video, we can actually start with some real getting into the story a little bit more. One thing we are not going to do, however, is work on our characters just yet. Our characters should come after our world has started to be developed, so that we can understand where our characters come from and what their aspirations might be in this world. So join me next time for a little bit of world building, and I'll see you there. Bye. Hey, you made it to the end! That's awesome! If you'd like to support me, please like the video below and subscribe to my channel. You can also support me on Patreon for some more RPG Maker plugin development and videos like the one you just saw. I'd also like to take this time to thank Usagi for my avatar, which you're viewing right now, and I will be linking her channel right here, so please give her a look. Anyway, until next time everybody, bye!